this video is to introduce algebra substitution. In the previous video in this series, I explained what an equation is, what it consists of, and the components that make up an equation. So the next step in your introduction to algebra would be what's called algebra substitution. And essentially what algebra substitution is you are being given values for x, y, or whatever variable is in the expression, and you are then inputting that value into the expression and evaluating the expression to yield a definite result. So the easiest way to learn algebra substitution is to go straight into the examples. So I started with quite a straightforward expression, and then right above that I've given the information needed to solve. So here you can see that I've written if x is equal to 2 and y is equal to 4, evaluate these following expressions. So the first one, the expression is 4x. So we have a coefficient of 4, and then we have an x that is in product with that, or is being multiplied by that. So here we see that we're given the information that we need to evaluate this expression. We know that x is equal to 2. So because there is no equals sign, these are purely expressions. We're not dealing with equations. So to evaluate this, all we need to do is substitute the value we're given for x into the expression 4x, and then continue to solve the expression. So doing that would yield the following. So this notation of the 2 in brackets just signifies that they're in product with one another. It just saves writing 4x as the multiply sign by any other value, because it could get hard to read. So this is generally the convention used for two items in product with one another. So as we can see, it was pretty straightforward. We just picked up one value that we were given in the question, inputted it into the expression where we see that x, and then evaluated it to yield a value of 8. And that is it complete. The second example is a little more complex, but only because we have two items here. We have an x and a y, whereas before we just had the x. But again, it's the same principle. We're given the information up here of x is equal to 2 and y is equal to 4. So once again, we pick up and input the values given into this expression and then just evaluate. So we'll have 3 multiplied by y, which we know to be a value of 4. Then we have a minus, then we have a 2, and that is being multiplied by x, which we know that the value is 2. And here you see we just have an expression which just has numbers in it, so we can evaluate that to be 3 by 4 is 12, 2 by 2 is 4, so 12 minus 4 equal to 8 once again. So again, the expression looked more complex, but following the procedure we see it's still pretty straightforward. Now over here things get a little bit different. So you may be used to just dealing with x's and y's, but that's purely convention. It really doesn't matter. Sorry about that. What I was saying was, over here we're dealing with a's and b's as opposed to x's and y's. But the same procedure stands. These are just notifying two different values. The actual meaning behind them is the exact same as if you were using an x and a y. So maybe if you want to pause the video and try to solve this one before returning and seeing what the result actually is. So writing this explicitly with the values included, we have a 4 plus 2 multiplied by a, which we know to be 1, as it says it in the question. And then we have a minus and we know b to be 3, and that is to be squared. So now once again we have a numeric expression that just needs evaluating. So we know that 4 plus, and then 2 multiplied by 1, that's 2. And then we have a minus 3 to be squared, we know is 9, minus 9. And that is equal to 4 plus 2 is 6, minus 9 is going to give us minus 3. So this expression, when evaluated with these values, is equal to minus 3. So as you can see, regardless of the letters used, it's the same procedure throughout. Now the most complicated one would be here, as it is including a fraction. But once again, let's just go through the procedure. So because of space, I'll go over here. So we know that 3 multiplied by 1 plus b, which again we know to be 3. All of that is divided by 2 multiplied by a, and that a is squared. Once again, a numeric expression that we can go through the steps to evaluate. So 3 multiplied by 1 is 3, plus 3 is 6. So the top part of this fraction has a value of 6. I like to break it up into top and bottom. It just makes it easier, especially when equations get very long. We know that 1 squared is 1, multiplied by 2 is 2. And we can evaluate this a little further, as 6 divided by 2 goes in 3 times. So this expression that initially looked quite complicated, as we have fractions, we have squared, and we have 2 unknowns, when following the procedure and breaking down what we actually have to do when we know the values, we can see that it's not too complicated. So that is the beginning of algebra substitution, and every question from there can be built up using this same method. Hopefully that made sense, and in the next video in this series we'll start working into using algebra substitution, which will then allow us to evaluate equations and solve for different unknowns.